In this lesson, we're going to connect the wheel arches to create the side. Alright, so let's go ahead and connect the two wheel arches together. The first thing we need to do is we need to make them of one object. As you can see, we can select them separately, but we can only access the vertices or edges from one object. Okay, so we can't really get the other. So we need to make them of one object, and to do that we'll use the attach function. So that's going to be under Edit Geometry, Attach. So with one selected, you'll go ahead and activate Attach, and then left click on the other, and you'll now see that they're both of the same object. Still two different elements, but of the same object. So now we want to make them all one element, and we can do that by connecting them with polygons. So before I do that, one thing that's going to be very important as we go throughout this course is you'll want to make sure that you're not only working in the left view, but you're also working in your other views. So let's hit F on the keyboard, and as you can see, we have our wheel arches, but they're right in the center of our car. So we want to go ahead and pull those to the left. So let's pull that over right to here. Now you might be asking, okay, does it matter which side I push those to? It does. Seeing how we're working in our left view, okay, this is technically the right-hand side of the car if you were sitting in the driver's seat. So this is the passenger side. And so we want to go ahead and go to the front view, and we're going to be working right here. Okay, so the passenger would be sitting right here. And of course, I'm speaking as if we're in the United States. Okay, so hopefully that clears up any distractions or any confusion. All right, so with that set there, we want to come in and we want to offset this rear arch just a little bit. Now, because we've made them one object, we can still access them as elements. So let's select this element. Let's go to our back view by hitting V and K. And you can see that it's not quite to the outside yet. It's a little offset from the front. Go to your front view. You can select that front wheel well, and you can really bring that right up against that edge there. So the rear is just a little bit wider than the front. Okay, not by much. Now, if you also want to get some help with this and trying to figure out the shape of a car, it's always a good idea to have some reference images. So looking at this, it's you know, you can't really tell if one is outside of the other, but if you get several reference images together, you can definitely see that. Okay, all right. So let's go ahead and connect these two together. So let's go to Edge Mode, and what we need to do is we need to select these edges up to this seam because we're going to bridge it across. So I'm going to count how many edges I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and then we'll count here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we're going to have a mismatch. If I were to go ahead and bridge this, you'll see that I have a triangle. Now, triangles are not necessarily bad. I just don't want to start out with a triangle. Okay, it's good to have quads because we're going to be using a smoothing workflow, using Turbo Smooth and adding control loops to control the hardness of our edges. And so having a triangle right off the bat is not going to be a good thing for us. So what we'll do is let's hit Control Z one time. Let's go ahead and add in an extra loop to handle that, that loop there. You could add an extra loop or you could remove one. But in this case, I definitely need these two polygons at the bottom. Those are matching. And then I have two here. So I'm going to actually add another edge right in here. So to do this, let's take this edge and let's chamfer it. Now I'm going to chamfer, but I'm going to make sure that I have two in my connect edge segments. And what that will do is it will chamfer it, but it will leave behind the original segment. Okay. Now I'm going to split that. I'm going to remove that edge here in just a moment, but what I'm doing is I'm just trying to see if I can get all of these polygons to be about the same size. So I'm going to draw that down just a little bit to right about there. Okay, let's hit OK. Let's take that edge and just hit Control Backspace to remove that. If you need to, you can come in and you can move these verts a little bit. Okay, but try not to have it to where it moves too much. That chamfer is really supposed to help with that. Okay, so there we go. Alright, so now what we can do is if we go to edge mode, let's count this up again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so now we have the right amount of edges, and now whenever we bridge this, you'll see that we now have quads going all the way across. The really important thing about this is that we have these specific edges that are very important, and we want to make sure that we are creating those edges right from the beginning and separating out our panels and getting the proper curvature before we go in and really start to detail out our car. That's going to be very, very important. So once we have these connected together, we can actually come in and start to draw out some of these different panels. So let's go ahead and do that now. Here in the left view, let's go to Edit, Swift Loop, and we can add a loop right here that would start the curvature of our door. So let's go to Vertex mode, and let's move these vertices around. Now I'm going to show you a really great trick that's going to come in handy for us as we go along. I'm going to show you how to use constraints. To do this, we'll need to be in our Vertex mode. Let's go ahead and right-click to turn off our Swift Loop tool. And then we're going to scroll down to the Edit Geometry Rollout, and you'll see Constraints. Let's turn on Edge Constraint, and what this will do is it will allow us to move a vertex, and it will constrain it to the edge that it's on. And it will not change the topology of your car, or the shape of your car, I should say. So we'll pull that across to there, and then I'm going to take these, I'm going to bring those until they're pretty much straight up underneath that vertex there. So it just comes straight down like that. Then we're going to add another one right here. So we'll come in, use our Swift Loop tool, right click to turn that off, and then we'll just move these vertices into place. Being very careful, trying to make sure that we get those in the proper position, creating a nice smooth edge for our door. And then we're going to take this, we're going to bring it down to right about here, so that way that line just comes in there. Now we have a couple of shapes that we need to take care of here. You can see that we have this skirt, and we need to make sure that we are getting that proper shape there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to go to Swift Loop, and I'm going to add another loop right in here. Okay, so it should look something like this. Then you're going to grab those vertices, pull those down until they're in the proper position. Let's take this one, let's move that across, just like that. And then I'm going to take these two, and I'm going to pull them until they are right up underneath that corner. Now you'll see right here we have this line that it comes across, and then it appears to come down to this point. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this vertex down. So right click, target weld, let's take this vertex down to here, and then do the same thing for this one. So now we have this triangle. Now you might be asking, okay, wait a minute, we have this triangle, we just said that we don't like triangles. I'm going to show you a really neat trick here. Let's go to Edit and Swift Loop, and let's add a loop right here. What this is going to do is it's going to follow along the curvature of our wheel well, but it's also going to allow us to grab this vertex on its own. Let's turn off our constraints, and then we can pull that right up into there. So notice that we have this quad that comes across, and it turns into that. Now the really cool thing about this is it gives us the topology that we need for the skirt and for all of this to terminate properly. Now when I talk about termination, that means to end a loop. Okay, so this loop right here, we can, oops, let's make sure that we have our edge constraint on. Anytime that you are moving vertices on a seam, have that constraint on so that way you don't move anything by accident. Okay, and change the topology of that. Alright, so I like that. I like to split polygons as I go along. And then we also have these seams right here for this object right here. Now this is going to be one of those pieces that can be a little more difficult. It's got some very specific challenges that go along with that. So I'm going to hold off on it for just a moment. We'll get that as we go along. I want to continue to build up the rest of our seams, but more importantly I want to show you the shape that we need to get in order to create the side of the car. We're still very flat. If we take a look at this. It's still very flat. We want to start to shape that, push it in certain areas, and really start to get that side. And so we'll get started in that in our next lesson.